So remember the pattern we made in the last video? Go ahead and pull that out and pull your fabric out as well. You're going to want around 2 yards total for a skirt, collar, and all your accessories. So go ahead and lay your fabric out. What I'm going to do is open it wide and then fold it over just enough to fit the circle. Remember, this is a quarter circle, so you're going to want to fold it in half and then half again. As you can see, it's a little short, so I'm gonna pull it out a little bit, and you want to try and conserve as much fabric as possible. It's just more efficient that way, and you can always use the scraps for something else, like to practice or for other small accessories. Once you have enough space to cut out a circle pattern, go ahead and cut. Make sure you leave it as a full circle, so don't cut any of your folds. Just cut the inside of the circle and the outside of the circle. When you're done with that, you're going to want to notch. Make sure this notch is on the bias. Remember, the bias is the 45-degree angle of your fabric. The bias will be your center front, center back, and left and right. I find it's best to drape it that way because it gives the skirt more flare on the sides. The notches will also help you indicate, as stated before, front, back, and left and right sides. This will be really important when it comes to your pleating. So now you have one big giant circle, and you should have 4 notches. That's all you have to do to cut it for right now. We'll have to trim the hem later on. So once you have cut out the circle, we're going to start pleating. Now, I find that each skirt that I pleat a little bit differently. In general, in the front, I have one box pleat, and in the back, I have one box pleat as well. In fact, the front and the back actually just are mirror images of each other. So the front is a box pleat, but it's not just the kind of pleat where each side behind the face of the pleat touches itself. They overlap a little bit. So I call it a double box pleat. I don't know if that's the correct term at all, because it's a little difficult to explain in words. My front pleat is usually about 2 inches or 3 inches wide. It just kind of depends on how the fabric behaves. I always pleat and repleat several times for each skirt. I almost nearly never get it right on the first time. So don't be afraid to take some time, watch a movie, and figure out how your skirt wants to pleat, how it wants to lay, and what you actually visually like. Now, I use knife pleats on every other pleat except for the center, front, and back. Some people prefer to do box pleats all the way around. I think box pleats work great for anything that you want to put horsehair into. So if you're going to do this knife pleat method, I would actually recommend not using horsehair. You can try it for sure, but I think box pleats would look better because you'll get that sort of undulating up and down wavy effect that's more appropriate for the Eternal Sailor Scouts. But I'm going for more of a classic anime look with pleats that are clearly defined. That said, I never press any of these pleats because I find that they're so deep that they look fine on their own. Plus, I find that the creases look a little bit too harsh, and it can be a little distracting when they get out of place. So to clear things up, the front pleat will be about 3 inches wide total. So it'll be about 1.5 inch over each direction from the notch, but when you add them together, 3 inches total. You want the front pleat to be so much wider because it will not flare like the side pleats will. When the side pleats flare at the bottom, they will appear much wider. So it can look a little weird if your front pleat is oddly thin compared to your side pleats. So when you're pleating over to the side pleats, those will be about anywhere from 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches. Keeping in mind that this is simply the measurement for my skirt. Each skirt will be a little bit different, so you're gonna have to find which measurements work best for you. You're gonna wanna aim for 1 center pleat plus 3 pleats on each side of that. Once you have pinned all your pleats, go ahead and top stitch using a sewing machine. You're going to want to make sure your stitch is on 5. You're just going to want to baste it. This will hold everything in place. Be sure to back stitch at the beginning and end of your stitches as well. And don't forget to remove your pins as you sew. Once you have sewn the skirt by basting it, you will realize that you're not actually able to put it on. That's because it's currently roughly the circumference of your waist, and that means it's not going to fit past your shoulders or your hips. But don't worry, you won't need anything to zip it up. It's going to attach to your leotard using snaps. So what I generally do is I've drawn out a guide, but you can just use a ruler to mark this. I mark about 4 inches down from my center front pleat. You can pick whichever side you think is best for the front. So you'll want it to be about 4 inches down, and then you're going to taper it up to the sides. I mark on the fabric using a disappearing ink pen. Specifically, I like to use the Pilot friction pens. They disappear using heat, so any iron or hairdryer will work. You will want to make the stitches before doing any cutting, and make sure everything is even before you decide to cut, because once you cut the fabric, there's no going back. So be sure that everything is in place before you cut. And remember, you can always cut more if you have to, but you cannot take it back if you cut too much. Just take a little bit off. And sometimes, if I find that maybe I just pleated it too tight originally, I'll actually take perhaps a 1/4 inch off at a time around the entire top of the skirt. Once you have it to a point that you can slide it over the shoulders or over the hips, as you can see on the dress form here, you might need some assistance for this part if you do not have a dress form, because you're going to have to make sure that the pleats look nice and evenly separated all around. If you find that the pleats might look a little bit uneven, you can feel free to take out the stitch and re-pleat a little bit and baste back over the top. You might feel tempted to trim the bottom hem at this point, and sometimes I've done that, but I find it's much safer to actually save trimming the hem for last. The next tutorial will show you how to do the waistband, how to do the snaps for the waistband so that you can attach it to the leotard, and how to hem the skirt. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message, comment, send me an email. So thank you so much, and if you like this content, go ahead and give it a like, and I will see you guys in the next video. See you next time on So What?